We as individuals are shifting into this world where AI is sort of becoming our co-pilot. We're doing it on the personal level. We're also doing it definitely on the professional level, but a little bit more on the individual level, right? So we're doing it when we are maybe researching or writing, or we're using things like ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity to help with our reports. So absolutely, as knowledge workers, we are using these. It's when we get to the enterprise, it's doing these things at scale. That's sort of the next step on this. And that's where we're in the early days. If you look at the AI agent space, right, where AI can autonomously do things like respond to emails, workflow, all these things. But that is sort of the beginning. And that is where I think we're kind of peaking in the height, but the hard work is yet to come.
Welcome to AI and Marketing Unpacked, where we simplify AI for impactful marketing. I'm your host, Mike Alden, here to guide you through the world of artificial intelligence and its transformative impact on marketing strategies. Each episode will break down AI concepts into manageable insights and explore practical applications that can supercharge your marketing efforts. Whether you're an experienced marketer or just starting to explore the potential of AI, this podcast will equip you with the knowledge and tools you need to succeed. So tune in and let's unlock the power of AI together. Greetings, program. Welcome back to AI and Marketing Unpacked, where I selfishly use this time to pick the brains of experts at keeping up with and integrating or layering artificial intelligence into social media, content, advertising, search, and other areas of digital marketing. Oh, and you get to learn too. Subscribe to be shown how to prepare yourself and your brand for this AI revolution and come out ahead. Now, have you ever felt overwhelmed by the constant buzz about AI in marketing? Are you tired of hearing grandiose promises but seeing little practical application? Well, buckle up, marketers, because today we're going to cut through the noise and get down to business. We're living in a world where AI seems to dominate every conversation in the marketing sphere, but let's face it, while the potential is enormous, many of us are still struggling to turn that potential into tangible results. It's time to move beyond the hype and get into what our guest calls the GSD era. That's get shit done for those keeping score at home. The problem? Too many marketers are caught up in the AI hype cycle, chasing after shiny new tools without a clear strategy for implementation. That leads to wasted resources, confused teams, and disappointed executives. But what if there was a way to harness the true power of AI in marketing, delivering real, measurable results that impact your bottom line? That's where our guest comes in. Today, we're thrilled to welcome David Armano, a true visionary in the world of marketing and technology. David is a strategic and creative leader with extensive experience in marketing, known for his contributions to major publications like Forbes, Harvard Business Review, and Adweek. He's held leadership positions at several major marketing and consulting firms, and he's here to guide us through the transition from AI hype to AI reality. David recently published a thought-provoking article on intelligent experiences by design, where he introduces the concept of the GSD era in enterprise AI integration. He's at the forefront of predicting how AI will reshape our industry, and he's here to share his thoughts on how we can all become more effective marketers in this new landscape. Hey, David, welcome to the show.
Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Yeah, well, hey, like I tell people all the time, you did all the work to earn that introduction, and I appreciate you coming on here and talking to us about that article and about this idea, this concept of the GSD era in AI. Can you start by just kind of explaining what that means to marketers and how that might differ from where we're at today with AI?
Sure. And I think I position it as going from TBD, to be determined, to GSD, get shit done. A big caveat, Mike, for that piece is I was thinking about it and writing about it probably more in the context of enterprise AI. And so what that means is it's exactly what it sounds like. It's leveraging AI at scale. So so we are seeing benefits at the personal level, right? When we use something like ChatGPT or Perplexity or Gemini, these platforms now are at a point where they're really useful. I talk about on the personal front. I just did this recently. I'm planning a trip to West Texas, about a 6+ hour road trip. And It's the Texas that people think of the movies. It's the West. It's the desert. There's mountains. That's pretty rugged. And I was just going for a few days. And so I knew what I wanted to do. And in the traditional way of doing this, I would have Googled places to stay, things to do, right? And then I would have made my itinerary. But instead, I had a conversation with ChatGPT. And so I said, okay, I'm going 4 days. These are the kinds of experiences I like. I want places where I can stop and get coffee. I want to do a little bit of hiking. I want to see, I want to do scenic driving. And ChatGPT, of course, laid out, honestly, end to end, perfect itinerary that I've been working off of. So I've been doing the things like booking the hotels and places to stay, and I'm going to follow the route that it's recommending because it was perfect. So we're shifting already. We as individuals are shifting into this world where AI is sort of becoming our co-pilot. We're doing it on the personal level. We're also doing it definitely on the professional level, but a little bit more on the individual level, right? So we're doing it when we are maybe researching or writing, or we're using things like ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity to help with our reports. We can take large quantities of data and have it analyzed by things like large language models. Absolutely, as knowledge workers, we are using these. It's when we get to the enterprise, it's doing these things at scale. That's sort of the next step on this. And that's where we're in the early days. And I wrote the piece thinking about the early days of sort of the commercialization of the web, actually taking large businesses online and converting them into e-commerce, not just converting, but adding that to that. And I think we will be doing these things with AI, specifically if you look at the AI agent space, right? These where AI can autonomously do things like respond to emails, workflow, all these things that we're hearing companies like Salesforce talk about when they talk about agent force. But that is sort of the beginning. And that is where I think we're kind of peaking in the hype, but the hard work is yet to come, specifically in that space.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like you mentioned, Copilot. Within just the past few months, we've heard about some enterprise organizations that have implemented Copilot and then rolled it back. So they're having issues there. We're not
Yeah.
yet hearing a lot of success stories of enterprise. I mean, I love your example of training or planning a road trip because I'm doing almost the exact same thing. I'm headed the opposite direction later this year and looking forward to using AI to help me discover things that I wouldn't think to do, driving 2 days across the United States. But yeah, to your point, it's we're still early when it comes to enterprise. But in that article, you mentioned this idea called corkscrew corrections as we move
It's a
toward this
mouthful. It's a
this
mouthful.
DSD.
Yes.
It's a
Very cool.
mouthful. You even illustrated it.
Did.
And I'm still not quite sure what you meant. And by the way, I'll link to that article in the show notes. But if you could share what you are envisioning as some of the AI misfires, if
Yeah.
you will, and how marketers might prepare for those.
So what I did was I visualized a version of the Gartner hype cycle, if anyone's ever seen that. And the way that works is that basically over time, you sort of build up any significant innovation builds up to a peak, and that's the peak of the hype cycle. And then it goes through a significant dip. They call it the trough of disillusionment, I believe. That's
Yeah.
sort of where the innovation doesn't quite fulfill the hype. But then you kind of come back up, not to the heights of the hype, but to a midpoint, and it becomes steady. And so that was really my inspiration. That model I've always loved because it makes a lot of sense. The twist I added to it was instead of sort of showing this trough of disillusionment or this big dip, like for example, in those early e-commerce days, which I worked and lived through, and I referenced that in the piece, we saw the bubble burst of the dot com, and it was instant. I mean, businesses. I mean, um, it was a bubble burst, and it was a major course correction. But e-commerce didn't go away, right? Over time, it got figured out and became very real, and now it's just part of how we do business today. I sort of instead of showing a big dip, I showed a couple of corkscrews, and I kind of called out that we don't know how many of these corkscrew corrections there will be. But I suspect that there will be moments, kind of like what you outlined, Mike, where, so for example, I'll use Salesforce as an example, and agents, the agent space. The promise of an AI agent is that we go from working with AI collaboratively and sort of helping us think or work through things or even create outputs into agents that just intelligently do the tasks for us. I'm going to figure out how, your email campaign, when it should be set, what the content should be, and I'm going to autonomously send it out. I'm going to autonomously respond to incoming emails, read what's being said in those emails, respond to those without you, the human, ever even interjecting. Oh, and then on top of that, if your email workflow needs improvements, the agent is going to figure that out as well. I'm paraphrasing, I'm taking a lot of
Yeah.
liberties here. But that is the promise. So when you hear really interesting statements like the agentic, that's this word that's now come up, this phrase agentic, it's alluding to this next shift in AI, which will happen, where it goes from sort of being a collaborator to an autonomous agent, basically an employee. So instead of having employee specialists, you have these AI agents that are specialists. And I do think that's going to be a major change and a major transformation within the large enterprise. But I do think some mistakes, lots of mistakes will be made in the process. That's one example in one space. And as those mistakes are made, it just takes one large company to make one of those mistakes. And that will be correction that grounds the advancement of these technologies.
Okay, great. So I think that makes sense to me. So would the Google AI overview rollout be another example where they announced it, people started using it, and then within a couple days, like 48 hours, there are all these stories of the most bizarre answers that you give and ended up having to roll it back a bit. Would that be another corkscrew correction in your mind?
And I included that in the piece, but I used audio overview as an example of how much almost accidental innovation we're seeing in this space. Because everything that I'm saying, where it has in common is starting with a use case. And there are a lot of use cases that are just not fully thought through where you really need AI for that. And the reason why I use Google is because they actually almost sort of stumbled onto this amazing feature. If anyone's, this is a feature that's in Notebook LM. And what it allows you to do is that you can take a document source or a URL and it will transform it into essentially almost like a Good Morning America. It's two AI personalities with really human-like expression. And they basically take whatever that URL or that source document was, and they turn it into a 10-minute conversation that's very podcast-like. So I use that as an example because actually it's a really innovative application that is a total content use case that, and as I speak, I know there are people building this for content marketers. They're going to build it for real. Like I've actually said, this is not core to Google's business model. They're only now actually drawing attention to it because it does this thing really well. But it was almost like a weird, like an engineer was like, oh, this would be fun if it could do this and just sort of tacked on. But as I talk about that, and this was the sort of point of this piece, someone needs to say, okay, that was an amazing innovation. But in the world of content marketing, right? Mike, I know that a lot of your listeners probably operate in that space. Someone now needs to build this amazing application that will do it, what has Google has showed us. But now there's only two voices that you can choose. You need probably 50 personalities you could choose. And then you probably need at least 20 formats. So that was sort of like this morning show format, right? Have you ever listened to any of the Notebook LM audio overviews?
Yep.
It's one
Yeah.
format, right? It's like a
Right.
Good Morning America, right?
It's the guy and a lady having a conversation back and forth. Yep.
Exact. And it's amazing. It's groundbreaking when you listen to it. But a use case approach means, hey, there's going to be a market for this. People could actually take content they've already created or create written content and turn it into some things people would really want to listen to. But to have that be a serious tool, it needs a full feature set. And that was a big part of my point that you need almost sort of this, yeah, I'm calling it intelligent experiences. Like, we're going to create an intelligent experience. This application that we're going to create is going to do these things because AI is so core to it. It's an intelligent experience that we're creating for both the people that sort of would use this application, how they work with it, but also the end users as well. And it's a shift in mindset to create these sort of new intelligent applications that really are not like the tools we used to use, where you have full control over it, and maybe you get templates as a starting point. These things become different. So that was sort of why I included that example as a proof point of how the innovation is there, the magic of AI is there. More rigor is needed to actually think about taking the cool things you can do with it and applying it intentionally.
Yeah, I love that example. In fact, I did a whole podcast episode, folks, that I'll link to, where I've fed Notebook LM everything that I could find about Notebook LM, and then had it talk to itself about it. So as a little podcast episode within a podcast episode about Notebook LM is fantastic. The example I was actually thinking about was in Google search, where they were doing the AI summaries and AI overviews of what you were asking for before you actually got search results. And some of those AI overviews were whack, to put it in very technical terms. And so
Wow.
they had to kind of roll that back a little bit. But you mentioned that intelligent experience design. Talk to me more about that. And how do you see it impacting the way like marketing teams are structured? Because I think that's really on top of a lot of people's minds is how is this going to affect my team and my role?
So in the very early days of the internet, which I was there for, when we were creating these digital products and experiences, the field that is now known as user experience, which has both user experience designers, it's actually gotten even broader. Now it's basically product. And then you have product
Yeah.
leaders and product managers, but they have UX designers on their team. So I'm kind of painting a bit broadly here, but that UX/product mindset needs to actually be applied even more with these intelligent experiences where you're actually you're using things like large language models, or thinking more forward, you're actually working on the use cases for what these agents will do. That one big difference between these experiences and the products that things like user experience designers created in the past is that we oftentimes, not only is the experience itself different, where even Chat GPT to some extent, it's starting to get so good it feels like you're having a conversation with a human being. I mean, it's not there, but ultimately AI will get there. And also, too, we're using a chat interface, but also we know that we're entering a world where you'll be talking verbally. You may be interfacing with the video, but you're not going to be using the traditional graphic user interface, which was basically it's been the dominant form of how we interact with technologies now. And it's UX designers and product managers that create those experiences. So I make the case that's not going away, but that now needs to coexist with these sort of intelligent experiences, which are going to need intelligent experience designers, people who really apply things like heuristics. They research the use cases. They think about something that I talked about was it's not necessarily the end user, but it's almost like the human having the relationship with the AI. And what should the dynamics of that relationship be? And user experience, it was always about the end experience being useful, usable, desirable. And I talk about things like it being intelligent, intuitive. And so we have to now make room and sort of formalize this practice so that it's not the technology leading the experience. It's not the engineering leading the experience. That's why I think ultimately that really cool feature ended up in Google, because it's just people experimenting with the technology and leading with the technology versus thinking about very intentionally, okay, this is a killer feature. How could this be commercialized into something that's going to help the field of content marketing advance? But that will be figured out by others. That much I'm confident.
Absolutely fascinating where we're at today. Folks, we're talking with David Armano about how AI is moving out of the hype cycle into the get shit done cycle. And in a moment, we're going to get into some practical steps. But first, let me share with you the tool I'm using every day to get shit done. This episode of AI and Marketing Unpacked is brought to you by Magi, your gateway to making generative AI incredibly simple and accessible. Wondering how to seamlessly integrate AI into your marketing strategy without getting bogged down by complexities? That's exactly where Magi shine. It provides user-friendly AI solutions that empower marketers just like you to innovate and elevate your campaigns without needing a degree in data science. Imagine having the power to generate creative content, insightful marketing data analysis, or even personalized customer communications, all at the touch of a button. Magi isn't just about providing tools, it's about transforming your approach to marketing with AI that's tailor-made to be straightforward and effective. So, whether you're looking to boost your content creation process or want deeper insights into your marketing performance, Magi makes it all possible with a few clicks. No fuss, no hassle, just results. Ready to simplify your AI journey? Visit Magi today to learn how their solutions can revolutionize the way you engage with your audience. Don't just market, market smarter with Magi. Tap the link in the show notes. So that tool Magi actually is kind of a funny example, I think, of what you were just talking about. It developed by my friend Dustin Stout out in Bakersfield, California. And the idea is simple, right? Where we've got multiple large language models at our disposal, ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, and Meta, and Gemini, and so on, image generation models. And it's hard for marketers to know which to go to because they're all different. They're all different locations, different user interfaces. Magi is a wrapper that brings all that into one user interface. Now, it's not nearly to the extent of intuitivity and that sort of thing that you were talking about a moment ago. It's still the same basic kind of I'm going to type in a prompt and get a response back interface, but the need is there, to your point, right? Where
Yeah.
we need to get to a point where these things are just so much easier to use, so much more intuitive. So I wonder if you could talk to the marketers who are listening right now. What do you think some practical steps are to take them from this hype cycle, this idea that AI is just hype, into actual reality of AI, implementing it into their organizations? What advice do you have for them?
I think as a marketing leader, it's huddle up with your team and your agency partners. Something I talk about a lot is there's so many aspects that you need to be on top of. You really need to know what your agency partners are doing. So for example, I mean, a lot of the AI tools, especially the large language models, can streamline the work that agencies do. If you are a enterprise or brand or you're a CMO or you're working underneath the CMO, you should know in detail how your agency partners, what tools are they working with. Something that you really want to know about is your company's, your brand's data, is that getting fed into large language models where data security could be an issue? So this is something, anything that you feed into OpenAI is going to learn from. And a lot of companies actually want to have more control over the data of that. That extends into your agencies as well. You need to know what they're using. You need to challenge them and understand what their policies are. Know what tools their teams are using. Know what tools your own teams are using. There's been some really great integration. Adobe, for example, has integrated into their product suite lots of really cool AI features where instead of using a lasso tool and doing everything manually, you can select something and prompt what you want to see in there, right? So make sure that your internal creative teams that are starting to leverage these tools are sharing those learnings and thinking about what are the platforms that they are going to use next. What actually has the legs. Adobe's a great example of certain no stranger to the marketing tech stack, right? That it is something a large organization uses already, has a lot of trust in, and so there's a level of safety. So you need to be balancing those kinds of decisions with also some of the smaller and innovative things that are out there that have potential, but won't put your company at risk either. So it's communication, it's experimentation within guardrails. There needs to be more coordination between the marketing department and IT. When I was at my last firm, we actually sold in an AI pilot, very innovative AI pilot with a company in the healthcare space to actually create what we call custom language models and train them off of executives' content and voice. And I was really impressed by this company and how much they had thought about things like data security. They wouldn't let anything be done in OpenAI, like no data sent to OpenAI, no data stored. But you can actually connect it through an OpenAI, which is what we did. But everything had to sort of be locked down and controlled. And they had a lot of IT involvement and they had some documentation outlining that. And then we had to sort of basically provide how we were going to build this thing. So communication with the teams, agency, cozying up with your IT, having some connective tissue with what's happening at the broader enterprise level. AI is not that dissimilar from social media, but even probably more so. It's a horizontal layer that needs to be applied to sort of every facet of the organization. So market is only one function, and each facet's going to have sort of their own mini kind of AI tech stack, but you need IT involved with ensuring and having visibility into each tech stack. I know I hit a lot of different areas there, but hopefully there's some connective tissue between this.
Yeah, no, yeah, that was great advice, and you did offer some very specific use cases and examples. I think for some of the CMOs and the heads of marketing, maybe who are listening to this podcast, of which there are many, and that maybe they're thinking, okay, I need to kind of prioritize how we're going to go about doing this and how we're going to go about adopting AI. What do you think the most promising applications are for AI in marketing now or in the near future?
It's a good question. I certainly the low hanging fruit is output, but it also comes with pitfalls. Obviously, anything you generate visually cannot be copyrighted, and there's sort of ethical issues around that. I think data analysis is a really good use case, but with data analysis, and we found this as well, you have to double check. So you can crunch a lot of data, you can sort of synthesize it more effectively. I don't think that the analysis of data or the synthesis of data, it still needs sort of that human in the loop, right? This is a phrase that we talk about when working with AI. But I think crunching of data, analysis of data, anything that involves writing, I think that it's all of this sort of language models are great at going from 0 to 1 and creating rough drafts that I think present a lot of opportunities to sort of work off of. And then, the things that you probably hear a lot about, just the automation of tasks, right? There are, even within the world of chat GPT, there's all these sort of niche custom GPT models where if you're, especially if you're a small business, I think a lot of the today opportunities are very much within the small business realm. Again, I think it will take a little bit longer in the enterprise, but there's a lot of automation that can be done and just doing things more efficiently, especially at the small business level.
Absolutely agree. In fact, I loved your point about the ethics. We did a whole episode back in episode 19 with Mitch Jackson, a lawyer, about some of the copyright concerns and the issues marketing agencies could potentially have if they're using generative AI to create content on behalf of clients. But you just touched on ethics. I'd love if you could unpack that a little bit more. What you see some of the ethical considerations are, whether that's to marketers, whether that's to some of the enterprise clients that you've worked with, maybe irrespective of marketing. What are you seeing out there today that people need to be aware of when it comes to ethics and AI?
It's interesting when in the kind of pre-generative AI world, there was always a lot of talk around bias that the people who are creating these sort of language models would have bring their own bias to it. That there's still things that I think are worth looking. We've also seen the opposite of that, right? We've seen Google sort of go too far and then misaccurately characterize historical figures and sort of use races that were not historically accurate. So we've seen how that can almost cut both ways. I think that the biggest ethics issue, honestly, well, two really. I think one is the whole sort of automation and jobs. And something that we always hear a lot about is how much more efficient, how much better these things can be in terms of allowing us to do more and automating the things that we don't want to do, like crunching data, for example. That is all true. But especially when we get into agents, when we start to figure that out, it will take jobs. And if it's making us more efficient, it means that by definition, we can do more with less, which means we need less people. So I think ethics, there's a big ethics conversation around, okay, as this thing is taking some jobs, it'll create some other ones. What's the ratio? I think that the amount of jobs, personally, honest opinion, the amount of jobs it creates will not be as much as what it takes. So there's an ethical conversation to have around that. There's also an ethical conversation to have around things like misinformation or using AI for bad. Something that we've seen blockchain and crypto sort of pre this big innovation that is a real big issue is just the criminal use of that, of decentralized sort of revenue models, or I'm not using the right terminology, but we know that criminals like to use crypto to just keep it simple. And there will be there already are, right? There are AIs used in scams. You can clone voices and sort of do all these, you can exploit vulnerable populations, elderly, things along those lines. So there's ethics around that. There's ethics around misinformation. You're seeing what's happening in California right now, where there's a debate to be had there between what's free speech and what's satire and ethical or non-ethical use of AI. So early days for all these things as well. But those are some of the big conversations. I think I really think that the jobs one is one of the bigger ones.
I agree. That is one of the bigger ones. That's why I have this podcast, is to help marketers prepare. And in fact, if you're listening and this is kind of your first foray into AI and marketing, I'll have a link in the show notes to my AI marketing primer that'll help you kind of get up to speed. It's free. You can figure out what the different LLMs are, and all the other jargon that we're trying not to say too much of, but you can't help it in an organization like this and a topic like this.
I use
But
one
yeah,
specific example job because I felt like I was talking
thanks.
voice talent. What voice talent as an issue. Now, this is not something that, like, this is a little bit, but we should be thinking about these. The first will be these sort of gig type jobs, but there are people that make a living and they do part time, some do it full time, but AI voice is now at almost at human level quality. And then the ability, not only is it the quality, but when you are doing, so I've directed enough video production, right? Being connected to both creative and marketing, where you get voiceover recorded and then maybe there's a script change or something changes and then each of you record segments. When you're working with AI voice, all of that gets streamlined. Oh, you don't like how this voice sounds? Let's try that same exact cut only with this voice, right? So like just giving that, just making this real. If people that have created wonderful careers doing voice talent, and maybe the best ones become even more valuable, but anyone that's doing those sort of block and tackle commercials or digital videos, sort of that mid layer, there's just going to be less. There will be less people getting paid to do voiceover talent. That's already happened. We're already that ship is already out of the port and sailed.
I couldn't agree more. That's an excellent example. It's a sad example, but absolutely, I think that's where the market is heading. So where else do you see the market heading? Where else do you see marketers' roles evolving? It's funny. I'm very transparent about how AI helps me come up with these questions, and I laugh at it because typically when it asks this question, it says in the next 5 to 10 years. And I think that's a joke. How are we possibly going to anticipate 5 to 10 years in artificial intelligence? Things are moving so fast. But as far as you can in this new GSD era, how do you envision things changing?
So when the first signs of generative AI, both in terms of the things that we were seeing with images, but we were also seeing with video and then large language models. While that was going on, the first article I ever wrote about it in Forbes, I talked about this idea of intelligent automation. I think we're all going to need to have a sort of a master's of intelligent automation. And what I meant by using that phrase was being smart and strategic about what, when, where, and how we automate things, leveraging AI, like how we get these new efficiencies. And so, for example, some of the pushback that I see on AI is, well, it'll never write as good as a human. It'll never have that. It'll never do a video that's good as a human. It'll never create art that's good as you. That's actually all right. But this is the sort of the reality, especially in the world of marketing. How much of what we as marketers that we produce just has to hit a certain bar, that good enough bar. And so as marketers, we have to sort of retool our organizations to say, okay, the things where we just need to do volume and kind of hit the good enough bar, how much can we automate? Because it's inevitable. And then you want to have the automation be good, and you don't want to have be inaccurate, and you don't want it to, you need to own what you can own. So certain things where like copyright is an issue and you can automate more of it. But the things that you may want to pick the moments where maybe it's your big flagship campaign, or maybe it's, a big event that you're doing, or maybe it's sort of a thought leadership idea that you really want to own. I still think that when it comes to craft, um, there's an artisanal touch that humans bring that, at least for now, we'll see. Maybe this, with AI, you never know. But I still think there are things that sort of that human touch just does better. And so then you need to be smart. You need that kind of intelligent automation as being smart about when to apply the inefficiencies and when to not. And sort of take a look at your marketing mix and your marketing strategies and your tactics and figure out what should be automated and what shouldn't be.
That makes a lot of sense. Today, AI can't write a best-selling novel, but can AI write a great email as part of a sequence? Absolutely. Sure it can. If you give it the right pre-work, the right prompting, obviously, if you just go into ChatGPT and says, write me an email, it's going to be garbage. But if you train ChatGPT and you teach it who you are, who you're talking to, what their pains, objectives, goals, all the things that every good marketer should know before they go about writing an email, ChatGPT can do
The
do a
emails
good
are really,
job.
really full. I think email marketing is prime. And again, I hear people talk about, oh, great, the emails that I never wanted to get, now they're going to be written by machines. Like, well, that's the point. If email as a medium has degraded, and you can make an argument to say like, oh, well, that's all the more reason for it to be just amazing. But not every email can be a work of art, right? So
Right.
if you're going to send, if you're, let's make this real, if you're software B2B and you're doing, nurture emails, and so on average, you're sending out 3 emails a month. And so, maybe 1 out of every 10 emails should be like really special to the point to where it stands out, right? To where where it's got special content and features, and it's just really got that touch, where the other ones are sort of by design, just kind of, they get read. If not, you know, you're just keeping up with the ratio of the open rates that helps run your business. I mean, it sounds a little counterintuitive, but you have to be realistic about these things. And I think data needs to play in. And we're gonna have to try. Like, that's a theory. I don't know. Try that. Could be maybe the one that you sweated over and you thought as the human was the best email. Maybe that the lowest click-through rates, and open rates. And
Sadly,
that's
as
a
a writer for over a decade, I can attest to that. None of the articles that I thought were my best work ever performed to best. Not one. It's the things that I just churned out. I mean, social media managers listening, they'll relate to me too. Stuff that you just churned out because it needed to be done. People resonate with the strangest things.
as marketers, be consumers and pay attention. So something that I've been thinking about a lot. I'm a Spotify user. I love it. It's great. And they have a AI DJ feature. And it's first time I ever used it, it was like magic. It's like, hey David, you've been listening to like a lot of stuff from the 80s. And when you're in that 80s mood, and so it's gonna play me a lot of that. It's pretty wonderful. And it's getting better. And I was like, that was a really smart use of AI. It actually takes kind of the old element of a DJ, and it's pretty magical. But I have to say, someone who listens to a lot of music, and that's an algorithmic experience, right? And it's a good one.
Mhm.
Now, there's a radio station I've listened to for years that has an app and everything. It's called Radio Paradise. And it's all human powered. It's human curated. I have to say, I listen to that very regularly. It's like Spotify is a little bit more on demand for me. Even as good as
Yeah.
their AI DJ is, when I want to be open to like new music and hear something unexpected, it's Radio Paradise. The human curation is still better than that AI algorithm, even with the personality. And there's sort of a little apple and orange. I really like Spotify. I like what they did with their AI DJ. So as marketers, pay attention, see what's happening, know the difference, know when human curation is needed and when that's going to be a thing that build your brand, and know when AI magic can also sort of help take you to the next level. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both, but you have to know when.
That is the question. David, this has been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for this really thought provoking conversation. For folks who want to know more, they want to connect with you, where should they go?
Good starting point is my profile website's davidarmano.me. You can also just Google my name. I write a pretty much a weekly newsletter that's called David by Design. I try to honor my sort of background. I started in this career in the marketing industry as a visual designer. So it was a way to sort of pay homage to that, which Mike also kind of comes back to that last post as well, kind of going back to thinking about sort of the early days of user experience design and thinking about intelligent experience design as we move forward.
Love it. Thank you, David. We will have all those links for you guys in the show notes below, his newsletter, his website, his LinkedIn post. So check him out. And don't forget to find the AI Marketing Unpacked podcast on Apple and leave us a review. I'd love to know what you think. Until next time, welcome to the grid. Thanks for joining us on AI and Marketing Unpacked. I hope today's episode has inspired you and given you actionable insights to integrate AI into your marketing strategies. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and consider leaving a review. We'd love to hear your thoughts and answer any questions you might have. Don't forget to join us next time as we continue to simplify AI and help you make a real impact in your marketing efforts. Until then, keep innovating and see just how far AI can take your marketing. Thank you for listening and have a fantastic day.